Good morning. Aaron Crampton here. I'm the chairman of the Killester Garden Village Committee. So we're here today in Killester on Middlethird Green for the Centenary Community Day, Saturday 26th of August 2023. So what today basically is, it's as it says, the Centenary Community Day. It's a community day to celebrate the centenary of the First World War ex-servicemen houses of Killester. So that comprises of Abbeyfield further up, Middlethird all around the green, and the Domain and the Orchard. There's 289 World War I ex-servicemen houses altogether. So 289 families that were settled here from the 1920s onwards. The first original scheme of 247 houses was finished in August 1923. That was Abbeyfield, Middlethird and the Domain. So today is our celebration of the estate of the families and in the First World War ex-servicemen that lived here in this quite unique and hidden history of Dublin. So we've got different displays on today. We've historical displays, we've local businesses, we've Dublin City Council. We have obviously our official book launch of the Killester Garden Village book being launched by the Minister of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Mr. Dara O'Brien TD. And we have some other VIPs from different embassies arriving, including the British, French, Belgian and Turkish embassies. We'll also have some different veterans from both the British Forces and Defence Forces. And we have, of course, some elderly residents coming, two of which are Jessie Brophy and Imelda Martin. Both are 90 years of age.
My name is Jessie Brophy. I lived at 90 Abbeyfield, Killester. We had a wonderful mother and father. And we went to school in Raheny National School. We went to Clontarf Methodist Church. And as I say, we had a wonderful life. We had a wonderful mother. My mother's name was Agnes.
Agnes McLaren.
And my dad's name was John, although my mother called him Jack. She always called him Jack. I don't know why, but we knew my dad as Jack. And my mother belonged to the British Legion. And we had wonderful excursions to Skerries. We used to go from the British Legion down to Killester Station. My husband was station master at Killester Station.
Don't forget, Jessie, that we used to get a bag of broken biscuits. Jacob used to supply them, and we'd all get them here at the Legion Hall, and we'd eat them on the way to Skerries, you know, and they were marvellous days. And if we didn't go to Skerries, we always went to Bettystown, one or the other, you know what I mean. But we met here and were taken down by the train, and that was a novelty to us, really, you know, kind of thing. You know.
We had our little roll of streamers to put out the train window.
Yes.
And we started off from the Legion Hall down the dump to Killester Station. And got on the train and had a wonderful day. Although we were very poor, we were very happy. We were very loved. Our mother loved each. My mother had 14 of us.
Yes. And I'm the 13th child on the 13th day of July. I was 88 July.
And I'm 90.
Not yet, you're 89.
Well, I've only a few months to go.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your dad? So was your dad one of the soldiers that the houses were
Yes.
built for?
He was a gardener at Walmore Lodge when he first came to Ireland.
That was before, after he left the army, Jessie. And then he was a station master on
Amin Street.
The British Railway, you know, at Amin Street then, you know, kind of thing. But he was in the army, and we had a brother, Tommy. He was in the Royal Fusiliers. And then we had another young brother, Cecil, and he was 21 years in the Royal Navy. And he only died last year at 89 years of age. He wanted to come home to Dublin to celebrate his 90th birthday, but he never made it.
And then we had a relation went down on the Titanic.
That was
Brendan O'Toole, was it?
Something in 1912 or something? Something like that, yeah.
They lived at a Feltram in Malahide.
Yes. So there was all these big families. My father came from a big family of 10 down in Feltram in Malahide, you know. And then his sister lived in Swords in Venetian Hall, and she had about 10 children. So they were all big families then, you know, kind of thing. But we never had much, but yes, we had everything really, you know, kind of thing.
We were never hungry.
Never hungry. No,
Mother tilled the garden to
Yes, he
feed
did.
us.
And we had a greenhouse and all then. And
She was caretaker of the Methodist Church.
Mother always made us a nice big bowl of soup of leg beef and lamb mutton, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we
You know,
lived on
kind of
soup.
thing. Or a pot of rice and raisins or something in that line. You know, we only had one pair of shoes, but we never needed any
And
more,
holes,
you know.
we had holes in the soles. And we had to go down the woods and gather sticks for the fire.
That's right.
Or we got no dinner.
Yeah.
You know.
You know.
We had a wonderful life. We could never say we were hungry or
Yeah.
we
And
were
always
loved
had-
and we were
Yeah,
fed.
the penny meter, the penny gas meter, you know. And when my sister Jean used to look after us, and there was no money, and she used to cut holes in the lino behind the door and put the penny in, just make the shape of a penny, you know, kind of thing. But they were good times. They were.
And we
yes.
slept 6 to a bed on the floor.
Yeah, you know, yeah, two, yeah. But the boy slept up, you know, up there, and maybe the boy slept down below. But always, you know what I mean.
We
There
were
was
very
a gang of us
innocent in
bed.
those days.
Yeah, there was. We slept there, and I think there was a bed behind the front door. We only had 2 bedrooms, you know.
And we were bath in front of the fire.
Yes,
The girls first and then the boys
and
after.
all to save water, you know, throw an extra bit of water to heat it up.
Boil
But,
the kettle on the fire and heat up the bath with
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
And my mother with the what you call it, the bath of water on 2 stools, with the washing board scrubbing it every Monday morning, you know. Kind
And my
of thing.
father's suit was made of indigo tweed. It went into the pawn on a Monday and out on Friday.
Yeah.
That's why it was called indigo tweed.
And the time my father was very much in the union in the station, and there was always a union meeting maybe now and again, and mother had pawned his overcoat, and he came home with the meeting on that Monday, and mother didn't know what she was going to do, so she ran into Mrs. Hoey next door to borrow his overcoat to go to the meeting. He never even knew it was a different overcoat. He put it on, you know, kind of thing. They were hard times, but they were good times, you know.
We didn't have a wardrobe because we'd no clothes. We didn't need a wardrobe.
No. But so anyway, I think that was it, you know. Yeah.
Well, ladies, you have a much better memory than me. You told me you wouldn't remember much.
Well, it's amazing once you start talking, it all comes back to you, you know.
Yeah, we went to Raheny National School.
Yeah.
And as punishment, the teacher, she'd keep us in at 3 o'clock till she heard the train going, and then she'd let us out to walk home.
Yeah, you had to walk home, yeah.
And my mother used to say, do not come across the fields to school, come round the roadway. And we used to go into the chapel and bless ourselves. And the teacher would pass in the bus and see us, and then we got punished the next day for doing that. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We had a wonderful life, although we were very poor.
Yeah.
Never hungry.
No,
I don't
never
remember, I can't remember a bad day in my life.
Yeah, I remember one time my eldest brother Tommy wanted an apple tart, and mother said, well son, if I had a few apples I'd do you a tart. And within about 10 or 15 minutes Tommy came back with a bag of apples that he's after robbing an orchard. So we had the apple tart, you know, out of robbed apples, you know. It's amazing. But nobody minded. Nobody minded. You know, nobody minded.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're finally ready to kick off. I want to thank you all for coming. It's great to see so many. And we're honoured to have Minister for Housing, Mr. Darragh O'Brien, and our Chair, Aaron, here behind me. I just want to cover a few safety precautions. I know, but they have to be done. So, firstly, we're in a wonderful green area here with very old trees. So I would ask any smokers among you, please make sure you extinguish your cigarette and dispose of it carefully. Also, we are not allowing any barbecues on the green today. You will see a lot of the roadways around are closed off, but the main roadway is still in use. So, if you need to cross, please do so with care. We also have toilet facilities. I'm sure you're probably all familiar with the Killester Club. So toilet facilities are all to my left and up into the club. There's also a food van there. Yeah. Just like that. Yeah. For anyone who may need first aid, we have our civil defence group. We have the civil defence group here to the left. Or if there's lost children, bring them to the civil defence and they'll be picked up there when the parents want them. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over to Aaron, Chair of the Killester Garden Village, and he will then introduce our Minister to you. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, I'm just fingers crossed for the weather. I know we got unlucky there with that last shower. It's typical Irish day. So good afternoon. I'd like to warmly welcome the Minister, embassy representatives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honour today as Chairman of the Killester Garden Village Committee to welcome you all today at this special event here in the Killester Garden Village for its centenary celebration, along with our book launch of the Killester Garden Village book, and to recognise and honour the service of the First World War ex-servicemen who settled here in Killester, along with their families. So I'd like to warmly welcome our guest speaker, the Minister of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Mr. Darragh O'Brien, TD, representing the Government, to our Centenary Community Day and official book launch. The visit of the Minister today shows the commitment of Government in supporting local Decade of Centenaries events in an inclusive, respectful and diverse way, which is very much the case today as we stand in what was known to some as the Killester Colony. I would like to also warmly welcome the British Defence Attaché, Colonel Sean Grant, representing the British Embassy. I would also like to warmly welcome representatives of the French Embassy, Miss Carol de Valder representing the Belgian Embassy, Mr. Mehmet Ig Ersin representing the Turkish Embassy. I would also like to welcome Mr. Paul Stevenson, the Chairman of the Royal British Legion Republic of Ireland branch, Mr. David Levins, Chairman of the Royal British Legion Claddagh branch, representatives of the ONE, Senator Gerard Crogwell, President of the Connacht Ranger Association, and also Deputy Cottleberry today. I would also like to welcome Mr. Brian Moroney, Chairman of the Royal Dublin Fusiliers Association, and those representing other regimental associations today, like the Leinster Regiment, the Royal 18-foot Royal Irish Regiment, the Munster Regiment, and also the Royal Irish Regimental Association in Northern Ireland. I'd like to welcome members of the religious community today as well. We have Reverend Canon Leslie Robinson and Father Joseph Whelan. I would also like to welcome the presence of all the local businesses and local organisations that have came today, either with a stand or either in the crowd today. Also Dublin Fire Brigade, their district officer today with their crew, the pipe band that will be playing shortly later, and also members of An Garda Síochána supporting today's event, especially our community guard Ger Guinan from Clontarf Station. I'd also to welcome later on, which will have Irish dancers on the stage and the St. George's Brass Band. Also our official photographers, Mr. Peter Perdue, a local here in Killester, and Mr. Patrick Hugh Lynch. Moving on to other local businesses, I'd like to welcome and thank you for the support, the Beachcomber pub in Killester, Expert Hardware, and all the other local businesses down in the village that have supported today by providing something for our raffle, which will be later on. There's some great prizes in there and I'm going to buy a few tickets myself. I'd also warmly welcome Mr. Michael Nugent and Mr. Nigel Henderson, who are our outstanding and professional researchers that were the main drive, and actually they're the ones who put all the hard work into the book. So all the credit really goes to Michael and Nigel. And as well, all the other contributors of the book, as it was really a community effort. With Mr. Tom Burke, MBE, also from Killester, that was involved. With Miss Jan Glover and Mr. Patrick Hugh Lynch, who's also our photographer today. I'd like to further just thank everyone that was involved, all our volunteers and everyone on the Killester Garden Village Committee today with the event set up today, with the hard work putting everything up this morning, and also the weeks and months leading up to today, be it out dropping leaflets or organising different businesses or stands to come today. So I'd like to really thank you, sincerely thank all the volunteers and the committee for all the hard work put in over the last few weeks and months. And my last thank would really go to last two thanks, apologies. My last thank goes to all our local councillors here today who've supported us, and local TDs. They've really put outstanding work, behind the scenes and in the background, of supporting our group and our committee, supporting the event today, and getting Dublin City Council on board in various ways. We have Dublin City Council Library, and also for them supporting today's event with our commemorative community fund. And then my last thank goes to two gentlemen that have made huge impact towards the book. As you know, it's a not-for-profit, and it's been a really community effort to get the book launched. It started back in November when I asked Michael and Nigel could they research all the ex-servicemen and families. So that's Mr. Eric Gannon from Ancestry Ireland, who also lives in Abbeyfield, and Mr. David McKay, who lives in Artane of Danann, Ireland. They both donated from their companies, from Ancestry Ireland and Danann Ireland, towards the funding, towards the book's research and the publishing of the book. And we really couldn't get the book, here today, present there at the stand, if it wasn't for those two donations from Eric and David. Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us today as they're both away in business. But I really thank, and I think everyone really appreciates their financial donation towards the book, which is an outstanding piece of work. So that's the end of my thanks. There was a lot there, because as you know, and I'd really stress the point, it really has been a community effort. There hasn't been one person that's been driving this. It's been really everyone behind, from locals volunteering, from local businesses, local organisations, different regimental associations, and of course Michael and Nigel, and of course then everyone on the committee that have put in, huge amount of hours, all voluntary, to make today special and a great day overall. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Minister Darragh O'Brien, TD.
Good evening, Margaret. Aaron and Dave Galerum Tronona, Curran Fairfalch, Killester and you, and Gohora Guramila Margaret Voss and Curra Convey and our law on special the law Starrel Donacona Hori e Killester. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here today and to join you on this very special historic day here for the community in Killester, and to launch this wonderful book, which I'll talk about in a moment. Just if I could say at the very beginning, as we gather as a community here today in celebration and in commemoration, another community in Ireland is gathering in mourning, unfortunately today, our colleagues and friends and neighbours in Clonmel. So I know that they're all in our thoughts and prayers after the terrible tragedy, 4 young lives lost yesterday, and I know that they will all be in our thoughts and prayers here today. So I just ask you to pause for one moment and just to remember the community and our friends in Clonmel and County Tipperary. Thank you indeed for that. Real pleasure to be here today. I know Killester very well. I'm a Northside Dub myself, and it was just down the road in Malahide, and the committee were giving out to me that I brought the rain with me from Malahide here today, but it's cleared and it's great to see it. And I really want to pay particular thanks and mention to the chair, Aaron Crampton, indeed the researchers, Nigel Henderson and Michael Nugent, who are here today and whose efforts have brought to light the truly unique and rich history of the residents of Killester Garden Village in a most respectful and an inclusive manner. And Aaron has mentioned all the different people who've been involved in this wonderful project. I, as a near neighbour of you, was quite familiar with some of the history of the building of this area and the homes that were built here post World War I, but I'd never known the richness of that history and the connection that the residents have here. Still, many descendants who have for decades actually been living here, descendants of ex-servicemen who fought in World War I, local businesses and sports representatives, and indeed the wider community. The launch here today marks a very special day as the decade of centenaries comes to an end this year. The Decade of Centenaries programme was established with inclusivity in mind, and over the past 10 years the programme has encompassed the different traditions on the island of Ireland and has provided real opportunities for us to focus on the everyday experience of ordinary people who lived through extraordinary times, and today is another opportunity for us to do that. Today has actually brought back the forgotten and many who were wrongly maligned over the decades. The book details, through 300 individual accounts, stories of bravery, of hardship, of misery, and indeed of triumph. Young men who travelled in their tens of thousands from Ireland, 200,000 indeed, to fight in World War I. 50,000 nearly who lost their lives and gave the ultimate sacrifice. And on their return, they came back to a very different and a very changed Ireland, an Ireland that had changed utterly. And they didn't receive the credit for what they did. And instead, in many instances, unfortunately, they were met with scornful ignorance of those who were indifferent as to what they had been through. But it is through days like this that we take back their history, that we suitably and respectfully commemorate them and remember them. And these 247 homes here in Killester, the largest Irish World War I ex-serviceman housing estate in Ireland. And they were completed in 1923, and it's only right and proper now that 100 years on that we remember it. But not just to remember the development of this estate, the people, the families, the stories, the sacrifice that many of the men who came and lived here and indeed who helped build these homes, that they're remembered here today. These homes were carefully planned, as you know. They were designed in such a way as to assist the ex-servicemen in transitioning back into civilian life. There was an emphasis on being close to nature, on the open air, and creating a neighbourhood and a brotherhood. And it's exactly what we strive for today. Killester Garden Village is a wonderful account of what can be achieved through great times of hardship. It provides a really timely reminder to us in government 100 years later of actually what can be done and what needs to be done to support families and to build not only homes but to build communities such as this wonderful community here in Killester. I would say, Aaron, it's a real pleasure to be here today and to be joined by many of my colleagues. I see them here: Senator Crockwell, Deputy Berry, Deputy Haughey, MEP Barry Andrews, and indeed our councillors who are here today. Councillor Heaney, I see Deputy Cian O'Callaghan there also, and it just shows you with the breadth of public representatives here, the support that they have for this wonderful project and for this initiative. It's a fantastic book, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the researchers here today. I do want to, in conclusion, thank you for the real honour of being here today, to remember all the men, all the women, all the children who grew up, who made this place their home, and we can see 100 years later how strong this community still is as an integral part here in North Dublin. Gura míle maith agah go léir.
So I'd just like to take the opportunity then to, with Michael and Nigel and Tom Burke here as well, just to present the book to the Minister, then to officially launch it here today.
Now I'm going to introduce two of our researchers, as we refer to them. We have Michael Nugent and Nigel Henderson. These are the two researchers that we had working on our book. So they're going to just give you a brief overview of their work and some of the findings we have. So, Michael, thank you.
Good afternoon, Minister, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here today to celebrate with you the centenary of the largest concentration of homes for veterans returning from the Great War on the island of Ireland. I had first been in contact with Aaron in February of last year regarding the military service of his great-grandfather, Sergeant Jack Brophy, the Highland Light Infantry and the Military Foot Police, who resided at 90 Abbeyfield. We were in contact on and off throughout 2022, and in October he mentioned that the centenary was upcoming and that he and his committee were looking to mark the occasion in a suitable manner. We discussed the option of identifying the initial residents, and the project that has culminated in the book which is being launched here today began from those unspectacular beginnings. As in so many similar cases, what started out as the possibility of recording the names of the residents on a spreadsheet rapidly grew wings. I realised at a very early stage that due to the numbers involved, I would be unable to undertake the research project alone. and I contacted my colleague Nigel Henderson and ran the idea past him. Nigel and I had collaborated in projects to identify those whose names were missing from the Great War memorials in Ballymena and Larne in County Antrim, and with many discussions over coffee came up with the idea of a book. And at this point I would like to say that this project would not have come to fruition without Nigel's drive, determination and expertise. There was, however, a significant difference between the war memorial projects that we had undertaken and the Killester project. The war memorial projects were undertaken over a period of years. With this project we had 6 months. It is no exaggeration to say that we worked all day, every day, to ensure that we met the deadline. I will have to bring a copy of the book home to show my wife, and I'm not sure she believed I was actually researching all the time. In carrying out the research, it was the personal stories of the residents that intrigued me the most. From the mundane stories of everyday life to family tragedies and stories of heroic deeds, they are all contained within the book. The research completed, Aaron, along with the publishers, have done a fantastic job of presenting the information in such an excellent manner, again in a short time frame. The book itself will appeal not just to those interested in the Great War and those whose relatives populated the village, but will also be of great value to those interested in life in Dublin in the early 1920s. I am honoured to have been involved in this fascinating project, and I wish Aaron and his committee every success for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We will now hear from Nigel. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been said before, but it's an honour and a privilege to be here. When we look around the houses in this area, some of them have changed. There's been additions, skylines have changed. But if you look over to my right and to your left, there are two semi-detached bungalows there that are practically unchanged externally in over 100 years. Not sure what they're like inside. Rooms have probably been knocked together. But this project, and my apologies for everyone that's out there in the rain, I'm in the dry. It has been so interesting. I've been researching the 1,300 odd houses that were built for Great War veterans in Northern Ireland. So I had a vested interest just to see what the differences were. One of the differences is that some of the houses, bungalows here, were allocated to commissioned officers. And that was in all parts of this colony, this estate, this community. In Northern Ireland, I've only found one commissioned officer allocated a house by the Irish Sailors and Soldiers Land Trust, and he only received his commission in the latter part of 1918. Another difference I found was that one of the things we did when we were researching was to try and find out where the men and their families were buried, and then try and get photographs of the headstones. And in doing that, we found time and time again that the headstones said so-and-so of Abbeyfield, or Middle Third, or Killester, or the Domain, or the Orchard. I've never found that in any of the headstones for ISSLT tenants in Northern Ireland. I'm fighting a losing battle here. Captive audience, they'll be all heading round to the refreshments in the Killester Club. But this project was fantastic. We had very little to go on. Sometimes all we had was an initial and a surname, and believe me, when you're trying to research J. Murphy or P. Doyle, it is a challenge. But we managed to get information about someone that lived in each of in about 98% of the houses. We thought when we started, if we get 70%, we'll be doing well. But we ended up with nearly 98%. Some of those are very basic, and some of them are so extensive. Men who served in the Boer War, served in India, and then went on to serve in the Great War. Some of them then also went on to do home service, or to join the Irish Army or the National Army, or, as we've already heard, the Garda Síochána, and other civil forms of service. these people were committed to service to their countries, whether it be Ireland under British rule or Ireland under Irish rule. And that's what made this community special. There were people here from all sectors of the community. It wasn't just Catholics, there were Protestants that lived here. And when you read some of Jan Glover's interviews with the sons and daughters of original residents, you'll see that time and time again they said they were Protestants, but they were just like us. They were maybe a bit more stuck up than us, or they thought they were special, or whatever. But we just got on, we played together. We didn't go to school together, but we played together. And we mixed together. It wasn't a divided community, it was a united community. And they were united by a common factor that the man of the house, if I can use that possibly modern sexist term, the man of the house had served in the British military in some way, shape or form during the Great War. And that's what brought these men together. 1923 is an important year. The building started in 1921. There were residents moved in 1922, and they described it as living in the middle of a building site. So whenever they were walking from Abbeyfield down to the Howth Road, they were walking through a building site. Now, health and safety, you wouldn't get that today. But then you've got 1923, July 1923, the Freeman's Journal reported that ex-servicemen living in Killester, Raheny, Clontarf and Howth got together in Killester to form a branch of the Legion of Irish Ex-Servicemen, 1923. The same year that the buildings here came to fruition, and 247 houses were occupied by veterans of the Great War and their families. In doing the research, as Michael has already alluded, we've come across some fantastic stories. We've come across some extremely sad stories. For example, children who were dying at the age of 8 or a few hours after birth to occupants of these houses. And those are tragedies at a basic level, at a family level. And how that impacted on people, we don't know. We've got people like Bill Haddon, who served in the Great War, was a civil servant all his life, and he was instrumental in arranging for part of the area to be set aside for a football pitch. That football pitch is now Donacarney United, and their grounds are named Haddon Park in his memory. That's community, bringing people together over something simple like football. And believe me, there's a lot of places where you can't get community involvement in football, or you get different views on who's the best team in the world or whatever. But we also had here, there was a Legion hut in the middle of this community. And that just wasn't used for Legion meetings or at Remembrance Sunday. It was used for community events. It was used for Christmas parties. It was used for wedding anniversaries. It was used for significant birthday parties and so forth, because this was a community of people. It wasn't just a group of people living in the same area. It was a community of people. In Northern Ireland, I know of 3 of the estates where there were Legion halls, but they were always outside the boundary of the... that's my 3-minute warning. Outside the boundary of the colony or the estate. This is the only one I know of where the Legion Hall was in the middle of the estate. Possibly because it was so large. 289 houses here. The largest one in Northern Ireland is 146 houses in Craig and East Belfast. Half the size of this. I'm not going to say much more because I think the book tells the real story. And if you haven't already bought the book, please buy at least 2. Because the more that are bought, the more they'll be available for ongoing projects as part of this community enterprise. Gura Magat.
Thank you, Nigel. We're now going to hear from a lady who was born and reared in the Killester Garden Village, and she's just going to give us a little overview of what it was like to grow up in Abbeyfield in those days. So, Miss Imelda Martin Doyle. Thank you.
I just want to say hello to everyone, and it's great to see so many people. It reminds me of the time we celebrated St. Bridget's Day here in Killester, and we all enjoyed it. It's great to see that everybody pulls together as they always did, and remember the men and women who made Killester what it is, a lovely village and a great place to live. I'm not going to say too much more, just have a lovely day, and it's great to see us all, including Joe Redmond down there. Thanks very much, and have a lovely day.
Thanks, Mel. And we're now going to hear from Mr. Tom Burke, who is the President of the Royal Dublin Fusiliers Association. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for waiting around, folks. And it's a bad old day. So, okay, if I can just say a little few words, you can bear with me then, I'll let you go then. Okay, so it is amazing to think that the shockwaves created by the assassination of a member of an Austrian royal family in June 1914, which resulted in the global catastrophe of the First World War, has trickled its way over the past 100 years to wash up on this little patch of green grass at Killester. Had that tragic event not happened, we would not be here assembled today. The tragedy of the First World War sucked in nations from across the globe. There were peasant farmers from Turkey, sheep herders from Australia and New Zealand, Gurkhas from Nepal, poor factory labourers from Berlin, Birmingham and Glasgow, and poorly paid unemployed youth from the tenements of Dublin and the back streets of Belfast. Their commonality of poverty gave them no reason to slaughter each other in their tens of thousands. The idealists who volunteered were fed on a pre-war diet of imperialism and empire for king and kaiser, or for a better world, soon realized they had made a mistake when they reached the battlefields of the Somme, Flanders or Gallipoli. It all ended with disillusionment and abandonment. What was it all for? And only to start the same just 20 years later. The Ireland the Irish veterans came home to had changed. As Yeats said, quote, "A terrible beauty had been born," end quote. It was born in their absence. Unlike their counterparts in Europe in the immediate years after the war, Irish ex-servicemen were often the verbal and physical targets of their fellow countrymen. The majority, however, simply kept their heads down and got on with their lives. They had seen enough killing in one lifetime. Most of the Irish ex-servicemen and women returned from the war in 1918 to the same tenement and poor farming misery they escaped from in 1914. Thousands faced unemployment and the poverty it brought with it. Veterans sold matchsticks, some resorted to begging in the streets. It is important to note, however, that the unemployed and destitute Irish ex-servicemen did not have the monopoly on the misery of unemployment and the lack of a decent house in the post-war years. They suffered the same fate as their unemployed fellow Irish citizens. Had it not been for the ex-service charities such as the Royal British Legion, the Joint Committee of the British Red Cross and the Order of St. John's Ambulance Brigade in Dublin, and indeed the St. Vincent de Paul Society, thousands of Irish ex-service families would have fallen into dire poverty and destitution. It must be remembered that the positive contribution the Legion Hall beside us had made to the community over the last 100 years. Thousands suffered mental and physical wounds for the rest of their lives. Their memories, and indeed the nightmares the Irish veterans brought home with them, were hidden away in mental hospitals or shoeboxes and biscuit tins in the attics or under the bed in the house. A medal, a photograph, or or the button of an old tunic were kept as reminders of who they once were and what they had seen as younger men. When spoken in latter years, they told their stories in hushed tones round fires and kitchen tables in the homes they had lived in. Those stories seeped into the stones and the walls and the timbers and the roofs of places like Abbeyfield, Middle Third, the Domain, and the orchard of Killester village, and to remain there for over 100 years. But, as the saying goes, cometh the hour and cometh the man. And in this hour cometh the man, Aaron Crampton, who along with a motivated committee of Jerry Lee, Kevin Martin, Martin Mannion, Avril Stevenson, Linda Byrne, Francis Chance, Ciara Ryan, Tommy Crampton, Rita O'Reilly and Eamon Delaney, and I name them all, began a project to take the shoe boxes and biscuit tins from the attics and wardrobes and to bring them out into the sunlight and place them in the window boxes in the front rooms of the Killester village. Their work was a magnificent example of community spirit. Included in this project is the installation of a small garden of remembrance, or a garden, I suppose, and thank you to Dublin Parks Department for their production of a fine park, hopefully. Also is the production of the little book, which was we mentioned, Killester Garden Village, the villages of the Great War veterans and their families, published by Liffey Press, which I encourage you all to buy. Through the wonderful research skills of Nigel and Michael, and indeed Patrick Lynch in previous years, they compiled the stories in the shoe boxes and the biscuit tins, the forgotten stories of men like Hugh Grant of Abbeyfield, who incredibly served in the First and Second World War. So too did Gerald Desmond from the Orchard. Mr. Devon served in the 2nd Royal Dublin Fusiliers in the First World War, and with the Pioneer Corps in the Second World War. James Curry, also from Abbeyfield, served in the Dublin Fusiliers. He died in January 1954, aged 72, from, and I quote, shock due to injury of an old war wound, end quote. Their stories, and hundreds more like them from Killester, are no longer told in hushed tones. They are told now with pride and respect. The book serves many purposes. It is an historic record of the story of Killester's Great War veterans and their families. It is one small piece of a jigsaw that makes up the complicated tapestry of the historiography of Ireland and the Great War. It will contribute to a wider history of the parish of Killester. It has reconciling features and may act as a model project for similar veterans communities throughout the island of Ireland. On many of the headstones of soldiers buried in the Commonwealth War Grave cemeteries dotted along the Western Front, you will see little stones placed on the headstones by people visiting the graves. Those little stones are reminders by passers-by that the man in the grave below has not been forgotten. This book is our little reminder stone to tell the passers-by that Killester's veterans and their families were not forgotten. I will conclude with the words of Stephen Gwynn, an officer in the Connaught Rangers, who once wrote a lament of the Irishmen who died in the Great War.
And local businesses stands, an ice cream van, and we'll now have Dublin Fire Brigade Pipe Band giving us a few songs shortly. So thanks very much for coming today.
While I have the stand, I'd like to present a little gift to Aaron for all his hard work. I know this is not on the programme, but it's an old, it's a 100-year-old, not a 100-year-old t-shirt, but it's a 100-year-old commemoration t-shirt from the car club I'm in. So there you go, Aaron, that's for you. Also, there's a card to be signed by all of us. It says Gurad Mila Mahagut. There's also a little badge, a commemoration of the World War I Flanders badge. So, and there's a book as well from going to signed by all the committee.
Thanks, Jerry. Really appreciate it.
Come on, you official photographer here. Oh, there you are. I didn't see that.
So I'd like to thank Dublin City Council, the Department of Tourism, Arts and Culture, and then the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage for today.